So hello everyone and welcome to this next live stream of DCS F-18C Hornet over the Strait of Hormuz map. So in the previous live stream from last Sunday, we took a look at the southern part of the map around the UAE as well as a section of Oman. And today what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move north over the Gulf into Iran. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little sightseeing tour around the southern portion of Iran. Actually, we'll take a look at where we're going to fly here. So we're going to start here at Lar Air Base, head down the southeast, down near Keshem Island, this island right here, and then we'll head out east, then over Havadari, then over Bandar Abbas. We'll head north, look at some of the mountains, head back east, head down to Manab, and then over the strait, and then we'll do a direct approach into Kasab. So here we are back in the cockpit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we'll do another startup. You know, obviously you don't have to do every single step in here, but kind of the Walter, Mitty, and me likes to do it as accurate as possible. And after each of these videos, we tend to get at least a couple messages from different Hornet pilots giving us little corrections and pointers. So we try to correct the code and then incorporate those into later videos. So let's go ahead and get this screen is forward centered. Stand by. There we go. That should be full screen now. Okay. So go ahead and get her started. So actually do a pre-flight. So brake is on, anti-skid is on, master arm is safe, wing fold handle matches. Looks good. And the seat is safe. So of course we're first going to go ahead and turn the radio on. I'm sorry, the battery on. And confirm we have 26 volts on both batteries. That looks good. Now we'll go ahead and check our brake pressure at 3000, and that looks good. And now we'll go ahead and we'll do the fire test.
Engine fire left. Engine fire left. Engine fire right. Engine fire right. APU fire. APU fire. Bleed air left. Bleed air left. Bleed air right. Bleed air right.
Okay, do a quick battery power cycle. And now we'll do the next channel.
Engine fire left. Engine fire left. Engine fire right. Engine fire right. APU fire. APU fire. Bleed air left. Bleed air left. Bleed air right. Bleed air right.
Okay, fire checks are done. Clear out this master caution. And now we'll get the APU started. So go ahead and APU on. We got the APU accumulator light on down here, which is all good. Waiting for the green light to come on. Great. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and crank the right engine. And we're going to wait for 25% RPM on the right engine. And actually, I'm using a Warthog HOTAS, and we actually have the throttle list where you can use to go from off to idle. And now we're waiting that crank up. That looks good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cycle the bleed air shutoff valves. Bring that back a little. Do a quick light test. And that looks good. And now that we got the right engine, we're going to go ahead and take the canopy down. Yeah, it's better, a little more quiet now too. And now we'll go ahead and put the displays on. That looks good. And now the radios. I'm going to put radio 1 to manual, radio 2 to number 3 channel. That's good. And at this point, FCS page, okay, now we've got our pages set up the way I want. And actually, we're going to be doing a lot more work on the MPCD. And one of the new features we added is the ability to go ahead and toggle the stick on and off. So we're going to keep this off for most of the mission so we have a more clear look at the MPCD. And at this point now we'll go ahead and actually restack. Make sure there are no 2s or Rs, and that looks good. Okay, so left engine. And 25%. To idle. And once we get to 61%, that'll show our cycle is complete, and we should have no L's or 1s at this point. And keep restacking. And everything else looks what I expect here once we get the SCS taken care of. And now we're good, and let's take a look at the INS. So I'm going to actually go back. Now we can start using this. So I'm going to go to my data page, waypoint, and we have the coordinates here, north and easting. And what we want to do is we want to compare our 0 waypoint to our actual waypoint, and we can just go to the F10 map and zoom in. And we check the lat long up in the corner. We see it matches, so that is all good. So at that point, we can go ahead and we'll start our ground alignment. And here you can see now the alignment process and the qual as well as the time. And what we're going to do is we're going to wait for the OK indicator, and that'll mean that our ground alignment is A-OK. And at that point, we'll move the INS switch to the nav setting. Okay, let's go ahead and reset the SCS and clear out all of those. Start putting the oxygen on. And we're going to move the flaps up to auto. And we should see zeros on that, and that's good. Radar knob to operate. And go ahead and do the SCS bit. Oh, hello, Mr. Fulcrum. Okay, and that beep indicates that the FCS bit is done, so I'm going to bring this back to the bit page. And bring this back to half flaps. And set takeoff trim. So we're looking at 12s and 30s, and that's what I want. Let's gauge the SAI. And set my pressure to, I believe here it's 29.85. Yep. That's good. And now I'll set the radar altimeter to 200 feet, and that's what I want for from an airfield. But if you're from the carrier, we make that, I think it's 40 feet. And so set our bingo fuel. I'm going to do 4,000 pounds. I'm not going to worry about TACAN. Let's put the EW suite on. Okay, it's still waiting for our INS alignment to finish up. Radar is set. Okay, let's go ahead and check last couple things. Hook down. Speed brake. And cycle back. Refueling probe. And launch bar. Okay, now we got it okay on the INS alignment, so we're going to go ahead and move the switch to nav. And we'll go to waypoint. We're going to go to waypoint 1, sequence 1. And if you guys looked at the last academic video, probably have a better understanding now of how the waypoint system is going to work. Go ahead and release the brake. Nose wheel steering on. And we're going to place the right DDI to the SCS page and the left to the checklist. And move forward a little bit. And brake test. Okay, so let me double last check around. Show you a little more light on here. Okay, let's go ahead and taxi out. So as I mentioned, we're in Lar Air Base, which is probably the most northern of the Iranian air bases. But then we'll be flying down south. We'll take a look at some of the air bases along the coast. And as you'll see, there's a lot of kind of an empty, desolate area in the Iranian portion of the map, but some very, at least for me, some very interesting topography. And fear not, I know where I'm going this time, taxi-wise. And once we get it airborne and I got everything all situated, I'll start taking a look at the chat and I'll start answering some questions. And when taxiing, you want to be actually around no more than 75% on the throttles. A little fast. Actually, clean up the HUD a little bit. And go ahead and cage. And I got some rockets on today, so we'll fire some of those off as well. And then later on, unless I don't forget, I'm going to go ahead and start demonstrating some of the flight model. In particular, kind of one of the cool things about the Hornet, in that as bad as you want to fly, it's almost impossible to part this aircraft. And I'll come to the whole short here and take care of the last couple of things until we go ahead and take the runway and take off. Alrighty then. Okay, so let's go ahead and arm the seat, tighten the straps, and we'll set the left DDI to the HUD. We'll keep the right on the FCS. Check our values. With our loading, we're limited to 6G on this flight until we stop releasing some of those stores. And everything else looks fine. We're at half flap. Okay, let's go ahead and take the runway. Checking traffic. And as you may have noticed, we got a new skin for today, the for Kuwait. And we actually have two different squadrons for Kuwait. And then later on I'll be showing some new skins for the Finnish. And actually, I think I posted a screenshot of the Swiss. Actually, it was in the academic video. And we also got some new low vis for a couple of the Marine squadrons. Okay, so let me go ahead and on the brake, up to 80%. Watching my EGT. Wiping the controls. Okay, release the brake. Full power. And one of my Hornet friends gave me a really hard time for taking off like a grandpa last time. So make sure I get the gear up in time. Stick back if it's about 10 knots slower. Gear up. Flaps up to auto. And maintain about 7-degree climb. And about 300 knots. Come off the burner. And here on the, go ahead and get the radar on. And raise the seat a little bit. That's better. And as reviewed in the waypoint video, we have our heading bug up here on the HUD, and then we have the name of the waypoint, waypoint 1, and the distance toward it. And one of the next tasks for the team is the moving map. So hopefully we'll have that pretty soon in the next couple of videos. As you may have picked up, starting to do more of these live streams, and the hope is that try to do one of these most every weekend until we release the Hornet in early access. But at the end of this month, I'm actually going to be in Moscow for about a week and a half. so won't be able to do videos while I'm away, of course. And I'm going to bring it up to about, what, 15,000 feet. Do an attitude hold. And I'll go ahead and cycle the next waypoint. Let's start bringing us out to the Gulf. And so right now I'm at, you can see 326 knots. So as long as I'm out of burner, I can actually go ahead and initiate ATC, or automatic throttle control. And this will keep us at the airspeed we have selected. And then the next step on that is going to be the, so this is called cruise control, essentially. And then the next step we'll be doing ATC for the approach mode, which will allow us to hold essentially on-speed AOA during the landing, which can be really handy. And I go ahead and turn on the dispensers. Actually, go ahead and I'll turn on the EW display. And we'll do a quick bit test. Yeah, go ahead and let's go to manual mode. So we have manual mode, semi-automatic mode, auto mode, standby. So back to manual mode. We turn it on, and now we can actually step through the manual programs and go to ARM, and then we can use this to adjust them. So for example, we're program 4, we can go to flare, then use the up and down arrows to add or delete the number from the program, hit save, and then back. It's a very simple page to work with. Go back to radar. Oh, got a contact out there. Yep, doing a spot search. No, looks like I lost it. Oh, yep. There we go. And as you can see the vector on it, its Mach, and its altitude. And still a lot of work to do on this. Obviously, there's no indications up on the HUD, and more to do on the attack radar display. But you know, that's an example of the single track target working in the game now. So you go to bore sight, vertical AC. And what you're also seeing here, so when I'm in the vertical AC, you see a very long elevation scan, but a very narrow azimuth scan. Whereas if we go to bore sight, it's much more bore-sighted. And then if we go to wide angle, you can see we're looking at what, a 60-degree azimuth and a 6-bar scan. And looks like we're 58 miles out to waypoint 2. And start configuring some weapons. We'll fire some rockets out at the first waypoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to air to ground, master arm on, bring up the stores page. We've got some Zunis on Lao 10s. And right now it's at manual. We'll go ahead and hit it to CCIP. Or we could go salvo, which would be both wings at the same time, but we'll keep it there. Go to tone 2. And we'll keep it there for now. Later on we'll talk about rockets in detail, but we can also then step through the stations. And you got the arm indicator. You have your rounds remaining up top. And here on the HUD, CCIP mode, rocket 16 remaining, and below that the standard information for navigation. And you can't see, but right now I'm actually moving my throttle around, but throttle's keeping nice and steady because we have the ATC enabled. Actually go to barometric altitude hold now, and keep us steady here at about almost 18,000 feet. And looking around Iran here, you can see a lot of the mountain ranges, this part of the map. Let's go outside. And as mentioned before, the way we're doing the maps here, particularly for the Persian Gulf Map, is actually a combination of satellite textures and hand-drawn art textures. And this allows us to give a much more realistic view up here at higher altitudes. But then when we get down low, we can have very high resolution, high detail textures at the same time. So we got a little bit of time here, so we're going to go ahead and answer some questions up on the chat. So William Belmont, no, he was asking about Vulcan. So let's see if we have any questions. Will the Rapier asset release with a map? Probably. It's almost done and should be hopefully integrated into our internal build relatively soon. Okay, a lot of questions coming through fast. Too fast. Slow down. Do you use TrackIR? Yeah, I'm using TrackIR actually right now, but it's also working just as well in VR, Vive, and Rift. Can you please call me F-16? Certainly a product we're looking forward to doing. But right now the focus, of course, is on the Hornet and the AC-52. Which modules see this year for DCS store? Hornet, Persian Gulf Map, and Yak 52 for sure from us, but I really can't and don't want to comment on third parties and speak for them right now. Carrier plans, certainly we're still planning the Nimitz class. And actually, a lot of the work right now is on the Nimitz and getting that ready. And I know you guys are looking forward to seeing some carrier ops, but there's a few things we want to get done first. First, we want to get the iFlows, the meatball, working on the new carrier. Want to see some steam from the catapults. And we also definitely want to have the ability to have static aircraft on the deck so it doesn't look like a ghost ship. Once those three items are good and ready for the carrier, at that point I'll probably start moving some of the videos to carrier ops. Okay, next question. Will there be a pilot model option for the Hornet? Yeah, it's definitely on the plan. I'm not sure if it'll be ready for the early access, but certainly something we want to do. Blue Angel missions. You can certainly do missions, and we actually now have the acrobatic triggers you can do, and also on the plan for different skins, Blue Angels is certainly very high on that list right now. And the cool thing is most of the actual no kidding F-18C squadron skins are pretty much done now. So now we can actually start moving on to some of the Hornet A+, upgraded A's for like the Canadians, the Australians, and the Spaniards. So hopefully we'll have some of those ready for the early access release. New ATC system. So the in terms of ATC, the big focus first is going to be on the ATC for the carrier. Departure, marshal approach, approach into the landing groove, and LSO, and strike. So first we want to get all those done. And once we feel we have a good ATC for the carrier environment, then we'll probably go back and start working on the airfield ATC. When you're making a MiG-31, maybe someday, but right now we got an awful lot on our plate before we can start thinking about aircraft like that. Can you shoot the gun? Sure. Let me action the gun. So what happened is when I selected the air-to-air gun, I automatically went to air-to-air master mode, and it brought up the gun auto-ac, and that's the big reticle you see up there. So that's my first waypoint up there. Actually, not first, but what's that, waypoint 2. So let's go ahead and throw some rockets down there. So I'm going to go back to air to ground. Select my Zunis. CCIP, and that's all set up. And looking down here, you can definitely see a lot of the satellite texture. But as we get closer, then you'll start to see more of the art-generated textures kind of be called out. And what this allows us to do is make maps with measuring gigabytes rather than terabytes. Checking fuel. Actually, let me go ahead and set it to my external tanks. And I can see the range reticle starting to dial down on the HUD.
Altitude. Altitude.
And with that, let's go ahead and head off to waypoint 3. And those fires up ahead, that marks the next waypoint. Actually, while we're going there, I want to kind of demonstrate something else, and that's the vapors along the Lex. And it's very dynamic. I actually think much more dynamic than anything I've ever seen before. And we're still working on the aesthetics of it, but what's kind of cool is it really is very dynamic. So let's go ahead and put ourselves in a turn here. And as I start to put, you can see it's a very wisp, but a very light AOA. Then as I start to increase the AOA, it'll start to increase, and actually you see the boundary layer start to come off the jet, and to the point it gets bigger and bigger, and eventually it's totally disturbed off the airflow. So just looking at the vapes, you can get almost a pretty good idea what your AOA is. Pretty cool. And one of the next tasks is going to be doing the overwing vapors, and then probably after that the mock shot cone. But of course all that really also depends on the weather conditions. That's why if you're watching an air show and it's completely clear sky, you'll see very little, if any, vapors. Whereas if you're watching a show where it's overcast and a lot of clouds, you're going to see vapes all over the place. So now we're heading along the coast here. We're going to head up to Bandra in that area. And the island there off my right wing, that's Kesham Island, and there's an air base on there. But we'll take a look at that base a little bit later on.
Altitude.
And now we'll continue, I guess it's east, cycle the next waypoint. We're up to 4 now. And let's bring her back up. And for the HOTAS, I'm actually using my Warthog HOTAS, and it works out very, very well for the Hornet right now, particularly with the split throttles. And virtually all the Hornet HOTAS controls I'm able to map to the Warthog HOTAS. And it's definitely more for Thrustmaster to comment on, but I know they're very actively working on their Hornet stick, and hopefully they'll have some news on that in the not too distant future. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and declutter this. Get rid of that. That's, oh, actually went back to the one. That's better. So it looks like actually down to 150, no more rockets. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the stores. And we're a bit lighter. And I'm more concerned about fuel now, so let's bring up the fuel page. And let's bring her down. Start taking a look at some more of the low-level environment. And there's several ports along the coast here that we'll take a look at.
Altitude.
Yeah, I know it's been a hot subject on our different forums and Facebook pages regarding the memory management. And that's probably one of the biggest priorities of the team right now is continuing work on the memory unloader. Again, it is very much not a memory leak. It's a case of essentially memory running out for people who usually have a lower amount of memory, or with missions, particularly multiplayer missions that have a lot of objects. And we just need to have a memory unloader that would dynamically unload unneeded memory assets to avoid some of the issues that you guys are seeing right now. And it's not a 2 weeks as in someday, it's 2 weeks as in, yeah, that's exactly when we think we should have this all ready to go. So that's one of the major ports we just passed there, and this is probably the major refinery oil storage facility here in the map on the Iranian side. Yeah, let's come down here to the power plant. And now we're going to go ahead and overfly Havardariya Airbase, which I think is the Iranian Naval Air Station. And we have the port of Bandar Abbas up here to the right. And now Bandar Abbas city proper. And this is the largest of the Iranian cities in the map. Pretty large city. Not nearly as big as, say, Abu Dhabi or Dubai, but pretty large nonetheless. And then at the edge of it, it's going to be Bandar Abbas International Airfield, which also, excuse me, has a large military portion of it. And I think a lot of the missions, single player, multiplayer, that's where a lot of the red air will be focused out of. Okay, looks like 67 and 70 pounds, so plenty of fuel still left. Let's go ahead and buzz Bandar Abbas. So this is the civilian side down here. And then you have the military side down here. The weapon stores here. And then you have, typical military hangars over here. Yeah, losing my waypoints. Okay, so as we're heading up to waypoint 5, let's take a look at something else. One of the biggest focuses of the sim has been the flight model. And like I mentioned before, in previous aircraft, we've done a lot of physics model on basic dynamics of the aircraft engines and the wing forms and all the control surfaces. But with the Hornet, it adds a whole new element for the flight control system. And one of the interesting things about the Hornet is that with earlier models, there were certainly situations where you could get it into unrecoverable departures. But then as the software continued to develop, to the point with later legacy Hornets, it's almost impossible to get the Hornet to control with the inability to recover it. And what I'll do is once I gain some altitude, I'll go ahead and kind of put it in the worst case scenario. And all you really do is just take your hands literally off the stick, allow it to nose dart, and then it'll fly itself into the prevailing wind and recover out at about 240 knots. But I definitely want to have some altitude here before I do this. Say about 15,000 feet. Like I was saying before, with the updated terrain, even very distant terrain now is much more detailed, doesn't look as blurry, faded out. I'm much more happy with it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to put it into a 90-degree nose-high angle, let speed drop off, tail slide, and see what it does. And this is very much a live stream, so anything could happen. So I hope I don't have to eat my words and not have it come a case where I can't recover it. Okay, hands off the stick. Building up the airspeed. And we're back. So let's try something else. Cross controlling. Very high angle of attack, 55, 54. Let's see what she does. Throttle back, hands off the stick. .240 and recover. Okay, let's head on to the next waypoint. Now, of course, if you were to disable the SCS channels or you had damage, it would be a very different story trying to recover from such a situation. But what's happening with the FCS channels working correctly is essentially overriding the pilot from doing something really stupid, and then also automatically controlling the different control surfaces to get it into a recoverable attitude. So things like flat spins and falling leaves are pretty much a thing of the past for late lot Hornets, OFPs. So fuel 57. And I'll bring her up to about 15,000 feet. And one of the things I like about this map in particular, you have a lot of, I guess, east-west running ridge lines. So some very cool opportunities for strike planning and ambush sites and things like that as well. Having message. So I've got a request for some valley flying. Let's fly down here. And as we get really close to the ground here, you can see some of the art-generated textures and detail really start to stand out. And that's the kind of thing we can't get if we just had only satellite textures, or had literally terabytes of file size. I'm actually going to go ahead and bypass this waypoint and head on to the next. And large portions of Iran here are pretty desolate, not a whole lot out here. But this is part of the reason also I think it's going to make the Persian Gulf map an extremely performance-friendly map at the same time. Because you really, obviously you don't have these huge forests like you do, say, in the Caucasus map or the Normandy map for that matter. Okay, I'm going to pull up. And you can also see just the very, very long draw distances we have in this map as well. And it's often, something you see is, you'll have some titles with, really excellent detail down low, but you have very, very limited draw distances. And then you have other titles that, really look great at medium and high altitude, but then they kind of fall apart down low. And one of the things we always strive for is having a great balance between the low altitude as well as the very high altitude. And I think that's one of the things that kind of sets DCS apart, actually. So let me get we're on next waypoint. I'll go ahead and answer some more questions. Okay, I'll try to answer some questions now. Can we get a fly? Sure, do a flyby. So right now, in terms of when, we're still looking at by the end of spring this year. And the big things we're working right now are still the flight model, the air-to-air radar, the EW page still has some more work, and the air-to-ground bombing HUD. Those are probably the biggest items we're still focusing on right now before we can move on to early access. Right now, the training missions, 7 of them are in voiceover. So you'll have a fair amount of training missions to play around with. We have the early access guide. We're working on the art for that right now, and my hope is that we'll have that available to you guys prior to release, so you can start reviewing that and learning some of the systems. But we're hoping that these videos are also going to be a good way to learn the systems prior to getting your mitts on it. So now we're going to start to descend down to Manab. So in terms of EW capability, we're looking at the ASPJ, the Airborne Self-Protection Jammer, chaff and flare dispensers, as well as probably later on after the early access, we'll have the Gen X ejectable ECM decoys. Let's see, I hate to ask anything. In terms of procedural campaign, something we're certainly very much interested in doing and actively investigating that right now. Now I'm talking about the actual town of Minab in Iran, not the airbase in UAE. Can't really do the afterburner at night because this is going to just be a day mission right now. Wing vapes coming along. Yep. Right now we're focusing on the Lex vapors, and once we're really happy with the technology on that, we'll move on to the overwing, and then after that, hopefully the Mach shot cone. Dedicated server. Yep, certainly something in the overall plan. When will the Persian Gulf Map be out? As soon as we possibly can. It's in, as you can probably see from these videos, in a very late state right now, and hope to have an announcement on that subject in the not too distant future, in fact. Yeah, you can switch MFDs between left and right. So I could, if you want to put the radar on the left, just go to my left DDI, radar, and it just switches over. Very simple. Let's go ahead and bring her back down. Actually, hurts my eyes to have the radar on the left. So paddle off. Let's bring her down.
Altitude. Altitude.
So it says, will the AGM-88 be part of the Hornet ordnance? Absolutely. Not for early access, but it's definitely one of the higher priority weapons for the Hornet. Mainly because it gives the blue side, really a no-kidding seed platform for the first time that obviously the players can fly. Pre-order Hornet and Gulf Map together. There's no pre-order for that right now, but given our penchant for bundles, very likely we'll have a bundle pack for both of those products together at a later point. And here's one of the dams we have in the map. And in terms of what needs to be completed first before we can get this map out, one of the big things we're working on right now is actually the sea. Correct tone, having transparent water, so you have that lighter shades along the coastlines and the islands. It's probably one of the biggest things. We're also adapting some of the housing to be more regional specific. Those are probably the biggest ones right now. There's actually a fair amount of routing for the different air bases for taxi routes and stuff we want to fix. But overall, this map, it's come along quite well and getting pretty close. And after the last live stream video, I think initially there were some concerns about the map being quote unquote too small, but I think some people did some really nice comparisons of the actual airbase layout of this map compared to the other maps, and actually it's about the same. It's really not that much smaller. Okay, so we're gonna head out over the Gulf now. We're gonna head back to Kasab Air Base, and we'll do a landing there. Then out that way, that's the Arabian Sea, and that's where probably most of the carriers will be parked during the different campaigns. Keep it about 5,000 feet here. Hold here and do some more questions. AG radar development update, please. So right now the focus is just on the air-to-air radar. We really want to get that right. Then after that, we're going to focus on the targeting pod, the AT FLIR. And then after that, then what we'll do is we'll take a lot of technology we've developed over the past 2 or 3 years for the AG radar, and then we'll apply that to the Hornet. But particularly talking, doing some more research, most of the Hornet operations really don't use the AG radar a whole lot. It's much more function of the targeting pod, so we feel the targeting pod has a much higher priority right now. Okay, shall we see any modern Russian jets in DCS? Certainly. I think it's just a matter of time. Just right now, again, our focus is on the Hornet. Then also, it's not a jet, of course, but the AK-52 will be coming out soon as well. Again, with the FLIR, just like I was saying, after the air-to-air radar is functional where we want it to be, at that point we'll start focusing on the FLIR. And at the same time, our hope is to increase some of the fidelity of actually how we're rendering the FLIR environment. So hot objects or cold objects look much more realistic as you'd expect them to be. Yep, so bring this down a little bit. So with weather, probably the big first step on the weather is probably improve clouds. And then with the clouds, hopefully having a more dynamic system with that, with weather fronts and just a more dynamic weather system technology. In terms of the number of skins with the Hornet early access release, I don't know off the top, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how many, but if you look at the FAQ, we actually have them all specifically listed out, so you can see exactly how many and which ones. Yeah, MI24 is being done by Belsim Tech. So with the AIM-120s, the big issue we're looking at here is actually proportional navigation versus APN. And once we have that addressed, I think a lot of the range and PK issues will probably be sorted out at that point. So for third-party titles, whether it's the Christian Eagle or the Harrier or so on, really not my place to talk about those. I'd probably direct you to the third-party forums for those. Okay, so actually I'm going to go ahead and start getting my landing set up. So actually, okay, I'm going to go ahead and set up my course line for the Airbase 2194. Okay, and I want to hit the waypoint at about 1,500 feet. And that should give me a 3-degree glide path to the runway.
Altitude.
And you can see on the HUD I have my course line, so what I'm going to try to do is line up with that, and it'll give me a nice cue for a straight-in approach. Radar altimeter on the HUD. So a little forewarning, when I was flying yesterday, there's a bit of an issue with the nose gear after landing, where it wasn't responding to nose wheel steering. So there's a very real possibility I may be steering off the runway here. So Kasab Air Base, it's situated in a very tight valley. So not exactly an ideal airbase to do overhead landing pattern on. And the sun coming down too. And just to the left of the angle attack indexer light, that's where the airbase is. So getting aligned up here now. Okay. Gear down, flaps down. And with the flaps down now, the aircraft is going into powered approach mode, PA mode. And what I'm doing is I'm using the throttle control to adjust my glide path and the trim pitch to adjust my angle of attack. And again, I'll be looking for about an 8.1 degree angle of attack at landing. And also flying to get aligned with my course line here. And I've caged the HUD now. And this one I'm just doing a little left and right stick. I'm really not even touching the throttle or the trim at this point. A little shallow on the report, on the approach. Should be looking at about 2.5, it should be about 3. But yeah, much better than last weekend. And you see we got the VASI lights there too. And my vertical velocity, what, about 650, and that's fine. We'd want to, be over about 850. And it's okay to come down a little hard. And on the brake, nose wheel steering. And we'll take her down to the taxiway and we'll shut her down. Uh-oh. Should have braked earlier. That's okay, though. Put our nose wheel high. Actually use the turn area over here. Oh, it would be nice to have thrust reversers, that's for sure. Okay, nose wheel high, and that'll allow us to turn a little tighter here. There we go. Okay, I'll taxi up here to the ramp and we'll shut her down. And I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember the Kasab is actually kind of a little enclave of Oman, which is surrounded by UAE. We'll go right here. Okay. Okay, let's see. O-box off. Engine's off. Battery. Turn off the displays. And that, my friends, is another look at the Hornet and the Persian Gulf Map. So for the next one, we haven't looked at the Persian Gulf Islands yet, like Keshem Island, Abu Musa, Siri, Greater, and Lesser Atum. So we'll take a look at those probably next weekend. And then after that, we'll start to do some really fun stuff, some combat operations. And also at that point, we should, knock on wood, have a lot of the weapon systems up and running, so we can really start to show those off as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, give you an appreciation for the Iranian side of the map, and look at some of the new features in the Hornet. And have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.